Today is January the 23rd, 2019. Welcome to the Personal Computer Show. I'm Hank Key and my colleague is Joe King. Do you know who has your personal data? Let me ask the question a little differently. Do you know who's using your personal data besides Facebook, Google, and Amazon? Our website is pcradioshow.org. We can be heard each Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on www.prn.fm, on the internet, as well as on various podcast hosting sites. Podcasts of the programs available on prn.fm, on the internet, as well as pcradioshow.org. To listen to the live program on the telephone each Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the number is 641-793-7091. And if you want to drop off a message, you can send it to hank@pcradioshow.org. To drop us a telephone message, the Google number is 862-800-6805. Today we are experiencing technical difficulties, so we're not taking phone calls live on 888-874-4888 this evening. However, we expect to be able to resume taking live phone calls on 888-874-4888 next week. For those who are listening to the program on demand, you can leave us a message on the telephone with your question or comment to hank@pcradioshow.org. You can also reach us on the Google number 862-800-6805. That's 862-800-6805, and start your message with the Personal Computer Show, followed by your message. Is Apple losing its mojo? Mojo is defined as good luck, charm, or skill that seems to come from something magical or supernatural. The market cap for Apple has dropped almost $300 billion, that's with a B, billion dollars in the last 3 months. Retailers are slashing iPhone prices across China as consumers say the phones aren't worth the cost. Experts said a mixture of poor pricing strategy and a lack of exciting features compared to local rivals like Huawei has led to the newest iPhone's weak performance in China. Apple, however, is unlikely to release a 5G-capable phone until 2020 at the earliest. Huawei phones are cost-effective and have good features, while iPhones are more of a trend. It's meant for those who want a chic item. One of the key features that Huawei introduced was a triple-lens camera on its P20 Pro, which was launched last year. For the next 12 months, the iPhone lacks one of the most appealing features of current winners in the Chinese smartphone market, the triple-lens camera. The magic of Apple in previous years was its ability to revolutionize design and technologies in mobile phones to manufacture next-generation smartphones. As the growth curve of the mobile phone sector plateaued, it has become challenging for mobile phone manufacturers to differentiate newer models from previous models and drive consumers. Apple is not learning from its mistake. Apple is planning to release 3 iPhone models in 2019, according to the Wall Street Journal. The problem is that many loyal customers of Apple are not compelled to upgrade to newer models because of the strong performance and specification of previous models. Is Apple in trouble? OnePlus is crushing Apple's iPhone dream in India. In 2018, Apple Inc. in India witnessed the stuff that nightmares are made of. iPhone sales in India fell nearly 50% year-on-year last year. A major factor behind iPhone's poor performance was the increase in competition in the premium smartphone segment, in which the rise of OnePlus was a game changer. The Shenzhen brand holds over 37% of the premium smartphone segment in India now. The latest models, iPhone XS, Max, iPhone XR, are priced atrociously high even for Apple loyalists, and the weak rupee has done consumers no favors. So what might Apple do? Well, here's what they did. Apple SE goes back on sale as a $249 clearance item. Apple has quietly resumed selling the iPhone SE as a clearance item in the United States, starting at $249 for a 32 gig model, down from the original price of $349, and $299 for a 128 gig version, which is a sharp drop from the initial $449. These aren't used models either. They're shiny brand new models, and you can get for a phone that went mostly unchanged since 2016's debut. You're effectively getting a shrunken iPhone 6S, including the A9 processor and 12-megapixel rear camera. It can still run the latest version of iOS, though, and that price can make it worthwhile if you're determined to replace a dying phone or just want a just-in-case backup device. It's not certain why Apple is only bringing the iPhone SE back for a clearance sale. It won't mind selling more iPhones, though. Perhaps the iPhone 6 SE should be renamed iPhone Classic to help Apple recapture its mojo. My colleague Joe King recently switched from Android to iOS, and I asked for his 2 cents.
Hank, you know that late in the last century, I always wanted to use that as an opening for one of my pieces that I write or speak. I'll try that again. Hank, you know, late in the last century, I got a strange instrument that was being sold by a company called AT&T. They were not owned by any of the baby bells at that time. It was a company that was pretty famous worldwide. The instrument that I bought from them for about, as I recall, $1,100. I got it from the 47th Street Photo. It was called, catch this, a flip phone. Now, what, you might ask, is a flip phone? Well, if you've ever watched Star Trek, you know it's a communicator. You pull it off your belt, you flip it open, you can access a number, you can talk into it, you can receive a call. It was a very handy thing. People like Verizon called it a cell phone. They were very unusual and, as I said, very expensive. So I was in the late 90s. Sometime after that, I got a newer version. It was called a candy bar phone. It was made by Nokia, and they called it a candy bar because, it looked like a candy bar. You could keep it in your breast pocket. You could drop it and break it at a moment's notice. The one thing that these phones had in common were they were made by third parties other than the phone companies. And it wasn't too long after that I heard about a thing called the iPhone. And that was still just another cell phone, but it was made by the Apple computer company. And like most Apple products, it was very well made, and they charged for it. It was very expensive. Well, because I was a cheapskate, and because I was used to using my flip phone and my Nokia phone, I said I was not going to touch. I did not have to touch the Apple. After all, I had gone from CP/M to Windows, and I never touched the Apple or later years the Macintosh. Why should I get into that now, I said, and I continued along. After a few years, there was a thing called a smartphone. Well, I thought all the phones were kind of smart. I would punch a bunch of numbers and somebody I wanted to talk to would answer the phone. That's pretty smart. Well, the iPhone, while it was very well made and very finely tuned. It also specialized in a closed environment. You bought the hardware, it came with software, some third parties would add to the software, but you as an end user had nothing to do with it. You just used it as an end user. And you had pretty much no control over the hardware. Well, it came to a time not too long ago that for various medical reasons, I needed to access a hospital's mainframe. And guess what? The only interface they would allow was the iPhone. It was just a few months ago, and, well, my wife had been an Apple user since the very beginning, and she wanted to upgrade her Apple 6S and get the new Apple XR. So I made a deal with her. She'd get the XR and I would take her 6S. I did not need the bleeding edge of technology. I just needed a way of interfacing with, I think they called it Epix, not to be confused with Epic. Epix was a mainframe data sharing operating system. It worked with or under Windows. I don't recall the exact works, but there were two different programs I needed access to, and they were both available at the Apple Store and not at the Google Store. So we went ahead. My wife got the newest, latest, greatest iPhone, and I took her, I think it was 4 years old, I'm not sure, 6S, which was still a perfectly good phone with one minor problem. It was manufactured with a battery that would gradually go dead in about 2 years, and as it lost power, it slowed down. It got to the point where she could really hardly ever use it. But I caught a lucky break because Apple, as opposed to most manufacturers, admitted they had a manufacturing problem, a quality control problem, whatever you want to call it. And instead of charging me $79.95 to put in a new battery, they said anybody who's got this problem with the 6S can bring it into their authorized, I think it's called Genius Bars, and they would replace the battery for $30, there more or less. I did that. I did that just around Christmas time. And Joanna got her new phone. I got my 4-year-old phone. We're both very, very happy. For the first time, I'm part of the wonderful world of Apple. Well, what do I think of the wonderful world of Apple, Hank? You know what I've thought about it in the past. You've asked me questions about it, and I've been easy enough to answer them. But then a question came up on my part just a couple of weeks ago. I'd been reading about Apple in the technical press, and I found out they had released an iOS, that's the operating system of the Apple and of the Macintosh. In the iOS 1.2, which was a patch they released mainly to solve a legal problem they had in the Middle East. I think it was in Turkey, Hank, if I'm not mistaken. They released this patch. It made people in Turkey very happy. And unfortunately, it made a great many people in the rest of the world very unhappy because it turned their beautiful iPhones into paperweights. Or in some cases, it turned them into hand instruments that could do everything in the world except make a phone call. And in some cases, you could make a phone call, but only if it was a Wi-Fi phone call. And in other cases, you could make a phone call, but as long as it wasn't a Wi-Fi phone call. Well, I thought about that for a while, and I said, I need somebody who's an expert to give me some guidance on it, and I called up my handy-dandy Apple expert who said, unless you absolutely need this patch because you live in Turkey, keep your hands off it, wait a while. I said, great, no problem at all. Went back to live my life peacefully here in New York, having an out-of-date Apple operating system, but it worked beautifully, perfectly well. I had no problems with it. And then one morning, I found a message waiting for me on my Apple iPhone. It said, install 12.1.2, question mark, yes, no. I said no. I then thought, well, maybe they fixed it. So I did some research, and I found out that iOS 12.1.2 is still all fouled up. Well, why are they pushing me to install it? Well, it turns out they've released a new copy of it. Did not bother to change the number. Why should they do that? It might make life easier for the end user. So I checked further, and sure enough, people were still complaining online about iOS 12.1.2. So I said no to the upgrade. Couldn't figure out where to delete whatever they had put in. iOS is not really like Android or before that CP/M or even Windows. It's pretty hard to find your way around if the Apple people did not want you to. If Cupertino can say, we know better than you, Joe King, they have no trouble saying it. I have some trouble listening to it. Every time it comes up, it seems to come up 2 or 3 times a week, I say, no, don't install it, and I go out on the line and see whether or not some of the smarter people, like Hank, have found a cure to it. Yesterday, golly gee, I went out and did my searching, and somebody said he found a solution to the problem. Well, I traced him back, and I found he freely published the solution. What he said was I should go into the operating system following the phrase settings, which is one of the apps that are easily available to the end user. I clicked where I was supposed to click and slid where I was supposed to slid, and then I found what his solution was. In one case, I should turn off Wi-Fi permanently. In another case, he suggested I leave Wi-Fi on, but turn off cell phones, which were called the data network. Well, that might solve the problem, but it would also destroy the use I got out of my cell phone. This is all very peculiar. Do you remember that earlier on I said, as long as Apple thought that they could do it better than I, that they knew what was needed to be done better than I, they would go ahead and do it without asking. Well, I just wanted them to fix their own problem. And to this minute, I don't know what to do. Because if I install iOS 12.1.2, I'm pretty sure I'll hurt my phone. And yet iOS 1.2.1.3 is in beta. Well, 1.1.1.2 was in beta and got out of beta and was distributed. What makes me think that 1.1.1.3 will be any better? I don't. What I'll do then, when they finally release it, is I'll keep saying no. I'll keep looking at the technical journals. I'll keep looking for news breaks on it on my iPhone. And when I finally see enough people are saying, wow, it works, then, and only then, I'll say to Apple, go ahead, install iOS 1.2.1.3, and thank you very much.
There was an article announcing that a Raspberry Pi stuff inside a mouse is a true all-in-one computer. You've seen those all-in-one desktop computers, like the Apple iMac and the HP all-in-one. They have a certain self-contained appeal for people who have no intention of ever upgrading their computer's components. There's only one problem. They're not actually all-in-one. Sure, the computer is built into the monitor, but you have a separate mouse and a keyboard. YouTuber Electronic Grenade Computer Mouse, on the other hand, is a true all-in-one. Yes, that's right. This is an oversized computer mouse that is also a computer in a mouse. It contains everything a computer is supposed to, including a monitor, keyboard, and obviously the mouse. Surprisingly, it's also reasonably sized and should fit well in most people's hands. A little flip-up display of the front shows that a desktop, and a keyboard slides out of the base for good old-fashioned typing. Electronic Grenade designed the mouse body in Autodesk Fusion 360 and the 3D printed the parts. The computer inside is a Raspberry Pi Zero W, and the electronics from 2 USB mice were transplanted into the enclosure. A mini Bluetooth keyboard is stored in the base, and the screen is a tiny 1.5-inch full-color OLED. Finally, an Adafruit Micro LiPo charger and a 500 milliamp battery power it all. That battery will probably only last an hour or two, but will provide actual all-in-one computing while it does. I sent that article to a very good friend of mine, and he replied with the following. He has a all-in-one computer since 2007. It has a built-in telephone. It's a portable computer. It has a CPU, keyboard, display, touchscreen, mouse, 64 megabyte of RAM, 256 gigabyte plus SSD drive. Of course, he means a micro SD card. USB, Bluetooth, microphone, speakers, 12 megapixel camera, GPS, accelerometer, magnetometer, LED flashlight, an FM radio built in, and it has Wi-Fi, and it has a built-in cell phone modem, and access to thousands of programs. As you can guess by now, he was referring to his smartphone. You know, he has a point there. From the mailbag, from listener A.S., he writes the following. A number of callers have described problems encountered when power was interrupted during a download. You suggested remedies that assume a high level of computer literacy. If someone has an image of their hard drive, what you repeatedly recommend, and experiences problems with Windows, wouldn't it be easier to simply restore the image using the backup software recovery media? Not only would the system be returned to the exact condition it was in before initiating the download, but the restored drive would be defragged. Then simply repeat the download. In 2010, Joe described System Mechanic as something I really like. To the best of my recollection, neither of you ever mentioned the product again. And then he goes on to say that in great detail that he happens to like System Mechanic, but since 2010 till now, it appears that the company has been taken over by Avangate, Avangate, and our familiarity was with Iolo. Back in 2010, there have been many improvements to the Windows operating system, and there are other utilities which have been made available. There is a full Windows backup in Windows 10. I happen to like the one that is offered by Macrium Reflect Free. You can do a full image backup, which includes your operating system and data, and it works very easily, and it's free. When we look at different software systems or utilities, does it meet the functional basic requirements that we feel that the average consumer needs? The other we look at is, what is the cost? If there is a similar product and the functions are very similar at no cost or free, well, we would recommend that. as much as we had been recommending System Mechanic in the early days, there are many features have been added to it to do more than just system backup. It also does optimization, and in competing with other products, it tries very hard to look for malware, look for garbage files, junk files. It tries to do defragging and so on. Well, I think that in terms of defragmentation, with people moving now to solid-state drives, that's one thing you don't do anymore. You don't defrag on your mass storage device. So let me comment first about what he's talking about. He said that the System Mechanic, which is now under the company of AdvantGate, is a Romanian company. He doesn't quite say it, but there are two things he noted. One is, should there be a trust in the software itself? I haven't found it to be an issue at all to date on System Mechanic. The second is that he has tried to use the things other than for image backup and found that some of the utilities are not very effective or it didn't work as advertised. In that particular case, I would do one of two things. One is I would uninstall the software, reinstall the software with all the necessary updates, because the software in question may have been corrupted over a course of time, or you may not have all the necessary updates that's required for System Mechanic to work properly, because you have to understand that these programs have to keep updating themselves as the Windows operating system gets upgraded and gets changed. There's no mention of what operating system you're using, so I can't make any comment on that. So if you have System Mechanic, you like it, but you're not happy with the fact that it's not working properly now, try the uninstall, and if you still get the same results, give them a call. You paid for the product, let's see what you get. It should be noted that when Microsoft does a Windows update, it eliminates many of the historical system restore that you may need to rely on. So the listener is correct to say that if you can select the proper system restore, it will be more efficient and image restore. But if the restore point is not there, you have to rely on that image backup. In a full image backup, some of the software may enable you to selectively restore part of your data without restoring the whole operating system. You can also restore the operating system without affecting any changes in the data that have been made. So when you do a complete image backup, and if you were to do a complete image restore, it means that all the work that has been done during that interval of time would have been lost. In the case of Macrium Reflect Free, it is free, but if you want to selectively restore data, instead of restoring the entire system with the data at that moment in time, there is a charge for the software. It's a reasonable charge, and it should not be an issue at all if it provides the functions you need. From our mailbag, we have an email message from EH. The subject is RJ45 splitters. I tried connecting two computers to one modem using a RJ45 splitter, and it did not work. One side works and the other does not. I don't want to get on the internet with both computers at the same time. I just don't want to be plugging and unplugging the cables to the modem every time I want to use one of the computers. It gets monotonous. Someone suggested an Ethernet switch like, and then the brand name is given. What do you think? Is this switch all I need and will do the job? Would you recommend something different? It has to be simple, easy, and cheap. Thank you. Let me just say that the recommendation that was given to you won't work. When you use a splitter, the purpose of the splitter is to take that cable from your provider, which you didn't indicate who it was, and it takes that one signal and it splits it off into two signals, one for the TV channels or the set-top for the TV, and the other is to go into the modem for your internet connection. Once you have that connection into the modem, if you were to plug directly into the modem a computer, you will have one computer with internet access. Of course, if you disengage that computer and put another computer on, you got exactly what you had described, internet access on the other computer. If you don't want to go back and forth with plugging and unplugging, what you need is a router connected to the modem. The purpose of the router is that it would take the signal and it feeds into the WAN channel, which is the WAN or Wide Area Network channel or connection, and you connect each of the computers to the LAN connector. Now, normally with a router, you have one WAN connector and 4 LAN connectors. And the reason for that is that the LAN connectors, the send and receive connection is all in the same direction. What you need is the ability to have a two-way conversation so that the modem knows which computer you are addressing. And with the router, what you end up with what is called the IP address, an internal IP address. And that allows you the ability to have that one modem with a subnet channel address up to 256 devices. Of course, you're never going to use 256 devices. And what you really need is a router, and apparently that you don't have a router as part of the modem that was provided to you. A router is very cheap these days. You can get it for very low cost. You want a simple router, and with the router, when you buy a router, there are a couple options that are available. One is strictly a router, and the other is a router where you have Wi-Fi capability that you can wirelessly attach to the router itself. For what you want something simple, just get yourself a simple router with at least 2 LAN ports. They normally come with 4 LAN ports and 1 WAN port, and it will work. If you have any other questions on that, please feel free to contact me and I'll get back to you on it. The documentation of a problem is very important. I recently received an email from a listener outlining a problem powering up his laptop. Based on the information given, I came up with what was the probable problem or cause. His response to me was, that wasn't the problem. He added that he had not mentioned that he did not have the proper power supply for the laptop.
Technology in the workplace, it's all over the place. And this is Benjamin Rockwell, and I'm going to take time right now. I'm going to put on my work hat, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that we as IT professionals do at the office. You may not be aware of this, but I can help you benefit. I can give you benefit by telling you what I do at the office and how you might apply this for yourself in dealing with technology. So, today I'm dealing with the world of the IT professional and documentation. I do up a lot of different documents on dealing with computers and technology. At any point in time, I probably have about a half dozen different documents, all in various stages that I'm working on to help people with this software or this particular set of processes, or maybe a certain set of procedures that they need to do, or policies. I've got a number of these working through, and I work on these on a regular basis. For instance, one of the documents that I worked on, and this is going back a couple of years, I worked on a document that talked about backups and how to do a backup. And this was specifically for another IT professional. Now, he knew how to do a backup. However, we needed to document certain things along the way. So we went through, we said, okay, how do you do the backup? Bump, 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 bump. You need to make sure that you do this when you're doing that, when you're at this part. You need to make sure you're doing that at this part, and so forth. Now, we should be documenting all kinds of things with our computers. One of the biggest areas where I can help you is talking about documentation of any time you have a computer issue. For instance, you get a blue screen failure. Yes, they're a lot more rare these days, but you get a blue screen failure. I want you to you don't need to talk about all of the information that's up at the top. You're mostly concerned with there's just a couple of lines that are usually associated with a number that's probably 0x and then 0001695EEQ, whatever. I don't know. No, not a Q, but you get the idea. There's that code. We just need that code. If you have an error message and you're in Word, jot down that error message. Unable to do this, that, or the other thing. Okay. Each time you come up with those errors, documenting that you had that error is very crucial. We have this idea that, okay, an error popped up and I'm going to call tech support. So I call tech support and they go, okay, what was the error? I don't know. I restarted my computer. Okay, well, tell me if it happens again. Okay, so it happened again the next day. Okay, so what was the error? I don't know, but I restarted it. Okay, I need to know what that error is next time you have the error. So let's get ahead of the game. We're going to write down any errors that come up. Now, the neat thing is we can see, as technicians, not as you, we as technicians can see what you're dealing with on a regular basis. All right, so John continues to have the 0x12345 error every time he's in Microsoft Word for longer than an hour. Okay, so we start logging that. Oh, he's had this problem 10 times. It's always the 0x12345. So then we can research 0x12345 on Google. Or maybe we already know what 0x12345 is because we fixed it over on Susie's computer. Perfectly fine. This is how we grow. This is one of those things that we do on a regular basis. We start piecing together what went wrong, how often it's going wrong, and then we start getting ideas on how to fix it. I mean, yes, we could just say, well, John, don't stay in Microsoft Word for longer than an hour. That's not going to help. We can say, yes, reboot your system every hour when you're in Microsoft Word. That's not going to help. But we will find out. But the important part is documenting those computer issues. When you go to talk to tech support, you should have a list of the various things that you've been tracking there. And you should be able to say, I have a list of all of the error messages that I've had over the last couple of weeks. Do you want to know anything about these? Maybe they'll help you decipher this problem. Or maybe the changes you've made. Maybe there's a number of different things, so keep track of these. This is Benjamin Rockwell. Back to you, Hank.
Thank you, Benjamin. There is Microsoft Office 365, and now there is Microsoft Office 2019. What's the difference? Office 365 is a subscription service. There are 3 versions with 3 different levels of support at $5, $8.25, and $12.50 a month, with a commitment of 1 year. When you purchase a new PC system, a trial version of Office 365 has been preloaded. When you annualize the cost of Office 365, it comes out to $60 to $150 a year. Compared to the traditional cost for Microsoft Office at a one-time cost, Office 365 is more expensive. While Microsoft Office 365 subscription-based plans require internet access to sign up, you can still use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Office applications while you're offline. Microsoft installs the desktop versions of the latest Office apps on your computer when you first activate Office 365, just as if you had purchased the program off the shelf. You will, however, need to go online every 30 days to maintain your subscription and prevent the apps from deactivating. In a business environment, Office 365 has the benefit of being able to have all users in the office upgraded at the same time. The tech support to maintain synchronization of Microsoft Office at the same level for all users in the organization can be a major logistic issue. For the home consumer, the current version of Microsoft Office in use is more than adequate. In order for Microsoft to have continual revenue from Microsoft Office, enhancements are added every few years. In reality, the average home consumer uses maybe 20% of all the features in the product offering. Microsoft Office 2003, released in 2003, seems to be the baseline software for the majority of users. Microsoft Office 2019 for Windows and Mac OS are the latest versions of its regular, non-subscription productivity suite. It's the kind of Office that 10 years ago you would have bought in a shrink-wrap package. But it's really not the version of Office that Microsoft would like you to buy or that you probably want to have. That's because at this point in time, Office 2019 is basically a limited version that does not include the new features of its Office 365 subscription counterpart. Microsoft's Office VP for Office and Windows, Jared Spataro, noted that Microsoft wants users to remember that the connected Office 365 apps will offer higher productivity because of their cloud connectivity and a higher degree of security. He also argues that these versions deliver a lower total cost of ownership. Not by my standard. For the first time now, the on-premises version of Office only provides a subset of the full functionality. Hey, let me repeat that again. Office 2019 is a subset of Office 365. And that means that there are a lot of missing functionality because virtually all of the most interesting new features, including all of the machine learning smarts that are now coming out in Office 365, will be missing from Microsoft Office 2019. Spataro acknowledged the year number doesn't mean it's the best version. Microsoft is now building into Office 365 only works because it's connected to the cloud. That's the only way to pull in data for the new Microsoft search functionality, for example, and to run the machine learning models and pull in data. Microsoft's strategy isn't all that different from Adobe's, for example, which now focuses on its Creative Cloud subscriptions and the cloud features that come with those to promote its subscription service over shrink-wrap versions of its applications. That has been a very successful transition for Adobe, and Microsoft is looking for the same with Office 365. You can continue to effectively use Microsoft Office 2003 and up. There are only two issues of concern at this point. Users of later versions of Office are able to read your data. They just have to output their data in an older format, such as RTF. If they didn't, you can download from Microsoft the read-only version of the app and copy the document to your version of Microsoft app that you're using. The other concern is Microsoft Office security updates. I don't know how long the commitment it will be there for Microsoft to continue with older versions. Microsoft has already announced that Microsoft Office 2019 will only run on Windows 10. We should not be surprised then if older versions of Microsoft Office will not be compliant with Windows 10. Are there alternatives? Well, there are a couple. Take a look at WPS Office. The free version is a basic clone of Microsoft Office without macro capability. If you need expanded capabilities such as macro processing, the paid version is modest in cost. The chief feature of WPS Office is the navigation is near identical to Microsoft Office. There is also Google Docs, where the navigation is near identical to Microsoft Office. It's a cloud-based Office suite. Google Docs free version does work offline. There is also Google Docs Business with subscription services at $5, $10, and $25 a month respectively. The support services are, however, different when compared to Microsoft Office with Azure Cloud Processing. It's time to perhaps rethink your Office processing needs. This week, most of the country is going through a very cold spell of weather. And for many of us, because the temperature has dropped to 0 or even less, we turn up the thermostat so we can stay warm, and as it gets warmer, we turn down the thermostat. Marty tells me that this is not perhaps the most efficient use of energy. Wasted energy is also dangerous, and that's what Marty is trying to tell us in cold climate houses and how much energy and energy cost goes into places that are not only not useful, but potentially pretty harmful.
When you come home to a cold house, do you turn up the thermostat, maybe to, 80 or so? Or in the summer, if the house is too hot, you turn it down to maybe 60? A lot of people think that somehow speeds up heating or cooling. It doesn't. That's a myth. And a lot of people think that just for the heck of it, changing the thermostat setting by 5 degrees or less doesn't make much difference. Maybe the utility meter spins a little faster, but so what? Well, so plenty. Do you really believe it's only about the energy you use? That is so not true. There's a lot more at stake than the utility bills, even possibly your safety, but I'll save that part for the end. Right now, it's the heating season, so let's start there. One reason people crank up a thermostat is because some specific place in the house feels cold. It may actually be cold. That happens when there are problems in the insulation, or shortcomings in the ventilation, or little human foibles like blocking the ventilation register with furniture or a suitcase or a wastebasket. You really want to find and fix those things before you crank up the thermostat. Want a good reason? The harder you work your heating and cooling systems, the sooner they'll need something repaired or replaced. Now, wouldn't you rather be able to wait a little longer, a lot longer, before those big bills hit? Here's something else to remember. The hotter the air, the lower its relative humidity, even when the air's moisture content doesn't change. I can put that another way, simpler still. The hotter it gets, the drier it gets. You hit some other big expenses when it's too dry for too long. Dry air sucks the moisture out of furniture. Fabrics fade more, wood is more likely to crack, everything ages more quickly. Dry air also sucks the moisture out of wallboard, out of window frames, out of door frames. You may never think of those things as plumped up, but drying them out still makes them shrink. And when they shrink, everything loosens. Small gaps can appear, and it doesn't take much gap to start losing a lot of heat. By the way, inside the walls, the place you don't see, inside the walls and under the roof, the structural framing can also shrink. So, if you hear your house creaking and groaning during the winter, it isn't haunted, it's parched and dehydrated. Not convinced yet? Still think cranking up the heat is okay? It can prove devastatingly expensive if you have a wooden floor. The first thing you'll see is gapping, either board to board or around the edges. After gapping, you'll see cracking. Now, the cracks will start tiny and grow, initially near the edges of the planks and at their ends, and then all over the place. After cracking, what you may see is a 5-figure number on the estimate to repair or replace that floor. Still think the extra heat is worth it? There's more. Heat rises, right? It almost never stops rising just because there's a ceiling in the room. It keeps going up one level after another, and before you know it, your attic is getting pretty warm. No, it doesn't stop there, not unless you did something to make it stop there. We'll get into that this spring. The heat keeps rising right through the attic ceiling, through the roofing board, through the shingles or whatever is on your roof, and into whatever comes next. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe nothing comes next, so the only harm you've done is drying out the shingles prematurely. Or maybe there's snow up there. I know you can figure this out. You got heat, you've got snow, put them together, and the snow starts melting. Maybe just a little, but melting all the same. Then, as I explained a few weeks ago, the melt water goes under the downroof snowpack and freezes again at the very edge of the roof. It makes an ice dam. It makes icicles. Please, take some time to look up ice dams. And indulge me some spoilers. Ice dams can result in damage to roofing, damage to walls, damage to ceilings, and occasional ceiling or wall collapses, sometimes bringing on injuries. All because you decided to crank up the thermostat a little. I told you, it isn't just about the utility bills. But hey, there are cures. Some of our segments coming up this spring will give you ways to keep a lot of the bad stuff from happening at your house. You can fix what's wrong and keep things from going wrong. You can save money and grief and time and trouble. That's coming this spring. Next week, I'll try to connect the dots between the Super Bowl, Groundhog Day, Chinese New Year, and your house. Don't miss it if you can.
Thank you, Marty. By the way, Australians live down under. Would you say to them that heat rises? Public service announcements of computer club meetings in the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut tri-state region. The computer clubs have random access sessions at each of these club meetings. If you have any questions or need for technical advice, the club members are more than happy to assist. There is no such thing as a dumb question. Princeton PC Users Group will be meeting Thursday, January the 24th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., Mercer County Library in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. The Brookdale Computer Users Group will be having a presentation on picking the best backup approach. Thursday, January the 24th, meeting time is 6:45 p.m., and they meet in the Middletown Library Large Meeting Room, located at 55 New Monmouth Road in Middletown, New Jersey. The Amateur Computer Group of New Jersey has their main meeting on Friday, February the 1st. Meeting time is 8 p.m., and they meet at the Scotch Plains Rescue Squad, located at 1916 Bartle Avenue in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. The Kings Bite Computer Club has their meeting on Tuesday, February the 12th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet at the Park Plaza Restaurant, located at 220 Cadman Plaza West in Brooklyn. Danbury Area Computer Society, DAX, has their meeting on Tuesday, February the 5th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet in the Danbury Hospital in Danbury, Connecticut. Westchester PC Users Group has a presentation on your digital afterlife. Thursday, February the 7th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet at the Keller Williams Realty at 120 Bloomingdale Road in White Plains, New York. The New York Amateur Computer Club meets Thursday, February the 14th. That's Valentine's Day. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet at NYU, 32 Waverly Place, Silver Building, room 414, and that's in Manhattan, New York. The Long Island Macintosh Users Group has their meeting on Friday, February the 15th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet at the Harry J. Schur Hall at New York Institute of Technology, Old Westbury Campus, located in Old Westbury, New York. If you have a computer club meeting you want me to announce on the air, send me a note. My address is hank@pcradioshow.org. Our website is pcradioshow.org. We can be heard each Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on prn.fm on the Internet. Podcasts are available from all the major pod hosting sites, as well as our website, pcradioshow.org. If you have any questions for us or commentary on any of our feature segments, just send us your email address with your telephone number, in which we can call you at a convenient hour for playback on the program. And if you have any questions for us, send us an email addressed to hank@pcradioshow.org. And just remember, there is no such thing as a stupid question. In the meantime, stay in touch and keep on computing, and remember to back up before you go to sleep tonight. I'm Hank Key, and on behalf of Joe King and Michael Horowitz, we thank you for listening. Stay safe and healthy until we meet again, same time, same station next week.